I never believed in fate until the day I turned down aisle 7 and saw the one face I thought I'd never see again. My name is Olivia, and at 67 years old, I thought my story of love had ended 3 years ago when I buried my husband of 42 years. I'd accepted my role as grandmother, as the widow who brought casseroles to church socials and babysat on weekends. I'd folded away my dreams like old photographs in a dusty album. But life, it seems, had other plans for me. That ordinary Tuesday morning, reaching for a box of Earl Grey tea, I heard a voice that sent shivers down my spine. A voice I hadn't heard in nearly 50 years. When I turned around, there he was. Daniel, my first love, the boy who'd kissed me under the oak tree behind the high school, the man I'd walked away from when life pulled us in different directions. And in that moment, standing in the fluorescent lights of a grocery store, I felt something I thought had died with my late husband. I felt alive. I felt terrified. I felt hope. What happened next would turn my carefully ordered world upside down and teach me that sometimes love doesn't end. Sometimes it just waits. Olivia? His voice cracked slightly, uncertain, as if he couldn't trust his own eyes. Olivia Mitchell? It's Olivia Harrison now, I heard myself say, though my maiden name felt strange on my tongue after all these years. Well, it was. I'm widowed. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. Daniel's blue eyes, still the same piercing blue I remembered from 1976, softened with understanding. His hair had gone silver, and lines creased the corners of those eyes. But God help me, he was still Daniel, still the boy who'd made my heart race when he'd take my hand during our walks through Miller's Park. "I'm so sorry," he said, and I could hear he meant it. I lost Margaret 5 years ago. Cancer. We stood there in that grocery store aisle, two people who'd once shared everything, now strangers, bound by grief and memories. Other shoppers moved around us like water around stones in a stream. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't believe this was happening. Would you like to get coffee?" The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them. I mean, it's been so long, and I'd love to catch up. Daniel's face broke into a smile that transported me back 50 years. I'd like that very much. That coffee turned into 3 hours at the corner cafe. We talked about everything. Our children, our grandchildren, our careers, our losses. He told me about Margaret's battle with breast cancer, how he'd held her hand until the very end. I told him about Robert's sudden heart attack, how I'd spent 3 years learning to sleep alone in a bed that felt too big. We cried, we laughed, we remembered who we'd been and discovered who we'd become. "I thought about you over the years," Daniel admitted, as the cafe began to close around us. "Wondered what kind of life you'd built, if you were happy." "I was," I said honestly. "Robert was a good man. We had a good marriage. But Daniel, seeing you today, it's like opening a door I'd locked and forgotten about." He reached across the table and touched my hand, just his fingertips against mine, and electricity shot through my entire body. At 67 years old, I felt like a teenager again, nervous and excited and terrified all at once. Would you see me again?" he asked. I should have said no. I should have recognized the danger in reopening old chapters. But when I looked into those blue eyes, I heard myself say, "Yes, I'd like that." We exchanged phone numbers, and as I drove home that evening, my hands trembled on the steering wheel, What was I doing? What would my son think? What would people say? But underneath all that fear was something else, something I hadn't felt in years: anticipation. The next morning, I woke up with Daniel's text message glowing on my phone. Breakfast tomorrow? I know a place with the best blueberry pancakes you've ever tasted. I stared at those words for 10 minutes before typing back a simple, yes. That breakfast led to a walk in the park. The walk led to dinner. Dinner led to weekly visits that became daily phone calls. Within a month, Daniel had become woven into the fabric of my everyday life, and I found myself smiling at things I hadn't noticed in years. The way morning light filtered through my kitchen window, the sound of rain on the roof, the taste of my coffee. Everything felt brighter, sharper, more alive. We'd sit on my porch swing for hours, talking about books we'd read, places we wanted to visit, memories from our youth. He told me about the scholarship that had taken him to California all those years ago, how he'd almost come back for me a dozen times, but convinced himself I'd moved on. I told him about the day I'd married Robert, how I'd thought of Daniel during the ceremony and felt guilty for years afterward. We were kids, Daniel said softly, his arm around my shoulders as we watched the sunset. We didn't know what we were giving up. Maybe we weren't ready then, I replied. Maybe we had to live those other lives to appreciate this. He kissed me that evening, our first kiss in 48 years, and it felt like coming home and discovering something brand new all at the same time. His lips were gentle, questioning, and when I kissed him back, I felt tears streaming down my face. Tears for Robert, for Margaret, for all the years we'd spent apart, and for the impossible gift of finding each other again. But happiness, I was about to learn, never comes without complications. My son Michael came to visit the following Sunday for our usual family dinner. I'd been nervous all week about telling him, practicing the words in my head. Michael, honey, I've been seeing someone. But the words died in my throat when I saw his face as he walked through the door. Mom, Mrs. Chen from across the street said she saw you holding hands with some man on the porch. What's going on? The accusation in his voice made me flinch. This was my 42-year-old son, but in that moment, he sounded like a wounded child. His name is Daniel, I said carefully, my heart pounding. We knew each other in high school. We reconnected recently, and your dad's been gone 3 years, Mom. 3 years, and you're already replacing him? I'm not replacing anyone, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, even as my hands shook. Michael, your father will always be part of me, but I'm lonely, sweetheart. I'm 67 years old, and I don't want to spend whatever years I have left alone. So you're dating? At your age? Mom, this is... He shook his head, pacing my kitchen. This is embarrassing. That word, embarrassing, cut deeper than any knife ever could. After Michael stormed out that Sunday, I sat on my kitchen floor and sobbed. Not delicate tears, but the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep in your chest, the kind that leaves you gasping for air. I called Daniel, and he was at my door within 20 minutes, holding me while I fell apart in his arms. Maybe he's right, I whispered against his chest. Maybe I'm being foolish. Maybe I should just... Stop, Daniel said firmly, pulling back to look at me. Olivia, listen to me. We've already lost 48 years. I'm not losing you again because someone else thinks we're too old to be happy. Are you happy with me? Yes, I admitted,
the truth of it undeniable even through my tears, then that's all that matters. Your son will come around. Give him time. But time felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. For 2 weeks, Michael wouldn't return my calls. My daughter-in-law Jennifer sent brief, polite text messages, but the warmth was gone. I couldn't see my grandchildren. The silence was suffocating, and I began to question everything. Was my happiness worth fracturing my family? Daniel never pressured me. He was patient, understanding, always there when I needed him. We'd have dinner at his place, and he'd tell me stories about his grandchildren, show me photographs, make me laugh when all I wanted to do was cry. He'd become my anchor in a storm I hadn't seen coming. Then one evening, as we sat on his back deck watching fireflies dance in the twilight, he said something that changed everything. "I love you, Olivia. I loved you when we were 17, and I love you now at 67. I don't know how much time we have left, 5 years, 10 years, 20 if we're blessed, but I want to spend every single day of it with you. No more running, no more what ifs, just us, building something real." I couldn't speak. The words I'd been too afraid to acknowledge even to myself hung in the air between us like a promise. "I love you too," I finally whispered. "God help me, Daniel. I love you too." We held each other as darkness fell around us, and I made a decision. I would fight for this. I would fight for us. I was done apologizing for wanting to live, for wanting to love, for wanting to feel like a woman instead of just a mother and grandmother. The next morning, I drove to Michael's house unannounced. My heart hammered in my chest as I rang the doorbell, but I stood tall, ready for whatever came next. Jennifer answered, surprise flickering across her face. "Is Michael home? I need to talk to him. Both of you, actually." They sat across from me in their living room, and I could see the tension in Michael's jaw, the way his hands gripped his knees. But I come too far to back down now. "I need you to listen," I began, my voice stronger than I felt. "Really listen, not as my son, but as someone who loves me."
"Your father was the love of my life," I said, watching Michael's face carefully. "For 42 years, he was my partner, my best friend, my everything. When he died, a part of me died with him. I didn't think I'd ever feel whole again. I went through the motions. I smiled at family dinners. I played with the grandkids. I showed up to book club. But inside, I was hollow, empty, just existing." My voice cracked, but I pushed forward. Then I met Daniel. And Michael, for the first time in 3 years, I felt something other than grief. I felt joy. I felt excitement. I felt like Olivia again, not just Robert's widow or Michael's mother. I felt like a woman who still has life left to live. "Mom," Michael started, but I held up my hand. "Please, let me finish. I know this is hard for you. I know seeing me with someone who isn't your father feels wrong, feels like I'm betraying his memory. But sweetheart, your father would be heartbroken to know I spent the rest of my life alone and miserable out of some misplaced sense of loyalty. He loved me. He wanted me to be happy. And Daniel makes me happy." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't wipe them away. I'm 67 years old. I don't know how many years I have left. Maybe 10, maybe 20, maybe just 5. but I want to spend them living, not just surviving. I want to wake up, excited about the day ahead. I want to hold someone's hand and feel that flutter in my chest. I want to love and be loved. Don't I deserve that? Haven't I earned that right? The room fell silent, except for the ticking of their grandfather clock. Michael's eyes were red, his jaw working as he fought his own emotions. Jennifer reached over and squeezed his hand, and I saw something pass between them, some silent communication that only couples who truly know each other can share. "Tell me about him," Michael finally said, his voice rough. "Tell me about Daniel." And so I did. I told them about the boy I'd loved in high school, about the scholarship that separated us, about the life we'd both lived without each other. I told them about his kindness, his patience, how he'd held me while I cried about their father, never jealous, always understanding. I told them about blueberry pancakes and fireflies and porch swings and all the little moments that had stitched my broken heart back together. "He sounds like a good man," Jennifer said softly, and I could have kissed her for those words. Michael stood up and walked to the window, his back to us. The silence stretched so long, I thought my heart might break. Then he turned around, and I saw tears on his cheeks. "Dad always said he wanted you to be happy," he whispered. "Even on his deathbed, he made me promise to take care of you, to make sure you lived your life. I guess I thought that meant keeping you safe, keeping things the same, but maybe it meant letting you find happiness again, even if it's different than what I expected." He crossed the room and pulled me into his arms, and we both sobbed together.
2 weeks later, I invited Daniel to Sunday dinner, our sacred family tradition. My hands trembled as I set the table, arranging and rearranging the silverware nervously. Daniel arrived early, bringing flowers for me and a bottle of wine for Michael. He was as nervous as I was, and I loved him even more for it. When Michael opened the door, there was a moment of hesitation, a heartbeat where everything hung in the balance. Then Michael extended his hand and Daniel shook it firmly. "Thank you for having me in your home," Daniel said. "I know this isn't easy." "Mom's happiness isn't supposed to be easy for me," Michael replied. And I saw the maturity in my son that I'd always known was there. It's supposed to be easy for her. Dinner was awkward at first, stilted conversation and long pauses. But then Daniel started telling stories about his own children, about the disasters and triumphs of raising kids, and Michael began to relax. They discovered they both loved fishing, both cheered for the same baseball team, both had the same dry sense of humor. By dessert, they were laughing together, and I sat there with tears in my eyes watching two of the most important people in my life find common ground. Jennifer pulled me aside while the men cleared the table. "He's good for you, Olivia. I can see it in your eyes. You're glowing." "I feel alive again," I admitted. "Is that terrible to say?" "It's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," she said, hugging me tight. "Love doesn't have an expiration date." That night, after everyone had gone home, and it was just Daniel and me washing dishes in my kitchen, he turned to me with that smile that still made my heart skip. He said, "I have something to ask you, and before you say anything, just hear me out." He got down on one knee, this 70-year-old man with creaky joints and a bad back, and pulled out a small velvet box. "Olivia, we've already wasted 48 years. I don't want to waste another single day. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to grow old with you. Even older than we already are," he added with a laugh. "I want to be your last great love story. Will you marry me?"
I pulled him up before he hurt himself, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes," I said through my tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." We got married 3 months later in my backyard, surrounded by our children, our grandchildren, and a lifetime of second chances. Michael walked me down the aisle, whispering, "Dad would be happy for you, Mom, and I am too." As Daniel and I exchanged vows under the same oak tree where he'd first kissed me 50 years ago, I realized something profound. Love doesn't end when someone dies. It transforms. It makes room. And if you're brave enough, if you're open enough, it comes back around in ways you never imagined possible. I'm 68 now, married to my first love, living a life I never dared to dream of. And every single day, I wake up grateful for grocery store aisles, for blueberry pancakes, for sons who learn to let go, and for the breathtaking beauty of second chances. Some love stories end, but some, if you're lucky, they just begin again. And now I want to speak directly to you, sitting there on the other side of the screen, who listened to this story until the very end. What did you think of Olivia's journey? Did it touch your heart? Did it remind you that it's never too late to find love again? This story is real. The names and locations have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved, but the emotions, the struggles, the beautiful second chance, all of it happened. Olivia's courage to open her heart again teaches us that love has no age limit, and happiness is always worth fighting for. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel, Real Hearts After 60. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and leave a comment telling us your own story. Have you found love after loss? Do you believe in second chances? We'd love to hear from you. Remember, your story isn't over. Your heart still has chapters to write. And somewhere out there, your next great love might just be waiting in aisle 7.